5:35, you would have realized something very interesting. In Srimad Bhagavatam, which is one of the very powerful and authentic scriptures, there is a nice verse that actually tells us what happens when we hear the pastimes of the Lord, or the names of the Lord, or anything to do with the Lord. I'm going to repeat the verse to you, and you should reflect on it and try and see whether it has applied to you so far. The beauty of Bhagavatam is that it is so practical that we can actually understand the effect of devotional service based on our daily lives. The verse is like this: Yatra idyante katham ristas, Trishnayaha prasammo yataha, Nirvaira sarva bhuteshu, Nodvega yatra kaschana. This is in the 4th canto. Basically, what the verse is saying is, Yatra idyante, wherever audiences come together, katham ristas, and wherever they try to hear the holy names of the Lord, or wherever they try to hear the pastimes of the Lord, or if they try to hear anything connected with the Supreme, then 3 things will happen to the members of the audience. First, Trishnayaha prasammo yataha. Trishnaya means material hankerings. So Bhagavatam tells us that the moment we hear the names of the Lord, whatever material hankerings that we have in our heart, actually they have a way of just naturally going away. They don't bother us so much. If we were not chanting and this was a social function, then we'll be full of hankerings. We'll be waiting for food to be served. We'll be looking around at people. All the hankerings that we have every day will come back. And in this material world, the nature of the mind is that it is the master of hankering. And the nature of the mind is to make sure that we are always never really satisfied. That's why you find if you give in to the mind, there will never be a perfect day, there will never be a perfect time to do anything. And every time you do something, the mind has a habit of advancing favorable arguments, either for what you do or against what you do. So material hankering is the biggest challenge that we face in this world. If we have a nice house, but we see our neighbor has upgraded himself, then somehow or another the house that we live in doesn't look very nice anymore. If we have a good car and our neighbor gets a better car, we think maybe it's time to do an upgrade. When we see someone having something and we think, well, I have something already, it's only a matter of time before the mind creeps in and starts saying, well, you have something, but you can get something better. So there is no end to hankering. But when you chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, you find very automatically, very naturally, that the hankerings that you have in the heart, which is material, they have a way of simmering down. So that's the first effect chanting has on the audience. The second effect is even more interesting. It is Nirvaira Sarva Bhuteshu. Nirvaira means envy, and Sarva Bhuteshu means to all living entities. So generally speaking, this is the other challenge that we face in the world. By nature, even if we don't want to, we inevitably become envious of each other, especially when Krishna is not in the center. The moment you take spiritual life out of your life, you find it becomes very easy for us to actually compare, contrast, and become envious. And envy, Bhagavatam says, is actually coming from what we call pride, subtle pride. Pride is the beginning of envy, and the end result of envy is always anger and frustration. So P is pride, E is envy, and A is anger. If you're not angry, you could be agitated. So it's very easy to remember the sequence. It's P, E, A, like a garden P, for example. Very easy to remember. So Bhagavatam tells us that when we are not in contact with who we are, when we're not in contact with the spiritual vibrations of the holy name, we tend to become materially very proud of who we are. very often our self-esteem is based not on genuine understanding of who we are, but it's based very often on false pride. So pride is something which is very powerful. And if we think that we have something that you don't have, and when you show us something that you have, then we become envious. And that's how envy comes. I will only be envious of you if I think I am better than you in something. Isn't it so? Or if I have something which is better than yours. Because the moment you show me something which is threatening what I have, then I become envious of you. And that is how in this material world, we are always envious of each other. Of course, as we grow up and we become adults, our envy becomes more sophisticated. We don't show it. It may be inside, but we try and not show it because it's not very polite. But it's still simmering somewhere. So Bhagavatam tells us that when we chant Krishna's names, like we did for about almost an hour, you will find that whatever envy that we may have in our hearts, it is just not possible for it to stay very long. Your mind is not on the envy, because your mind is resting on the holy name. That's why it is called mantra. Man means mind, and tra means resting place. So the mind needs a resting place. But very often the mind is so restive, not resting, that it cannot stay anywhere. Which brings us to the third effect of chanting on the audience. And the third effect is Nodvega Yatra Kaschana. Nodvega, Udvega. Vega means fear. Na Udvega means no fear. So you put it together, it becomes Nodvega. Nodvega Yatra Kaschana. So Bhagavatam tells us that the moment you start chanting the holy names of the Lord, and if you chant it with love, and if you chant it with your heart, then you will find that whatever fear and anxiety that we normally have in this material world, somehow or another, they are just left outside the hall, and they don't come in. Otherwise, every day, the mind is riddled with anxiety. Isn't it true? We're always having some form of anxiety. If the anxiety is not very high, it's not fear. But if it's not fear, very often it is some level of anxiety. And have you noticed how the moment you solve one anxiety, the mind comes up, knocks on your door and says, I've got another one for you. And when you solve that one, another one comes floating by. Normally the weekends should be free of anxiety. But when Sunday night comes and we think of Monday morning going back to work, all the anxieties come back. Therefore, anxiety, fear, hankering, envy, these are the obstacles to becoming peaceful. But Bhagavatam tells us that just by chanting of the holy names, beautiful, just by chanting of the holy names, all these three, they do not touch us as long as we are connected to Krishna. So then sometimes people ask the question, so as long as we chant, we are free of this and we're very peaceful. So what happens when we stop chanting? Everything comes back, isn't it? So what do? So that's why our acharyas, our teachers tell us that every time you become anxious, you simply chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And you're not anxious. Now you just stopped and you have become anxious. So what to do? Chant again. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So if someone thinks that they can just stop chanting and all anxiety goes away, we've got news for them. The whole point of chanting, or the whole point of anxiety in this material world, is that when we start chanting, actually anxieties, difficulties, challenges, they actually become our best friends. Because if they were not there, we will not chant Krishna's names. That is the truth of this world. We always tell ourselves that when everything is good, I will remember the good Lord. But generally speaking, when everything is good, that is the perfect time for us to forget the good Lord. But it's when everything is difficult that suddenly we start chanting. When I was younger, my mother knew exactly when my exams were coming, because suddenly she would see me chanting extra rounds on my beanbag. And she would know, exams are coming, that's why you're chanting. And then when exams finished, she would also know, because suddenly I would stop chanting. And she knew, okay, exams are over, so he stopped chanting. And then all of a sudden I would increase my chanting, and then she would know, the results are coming now. That's why you are chanting. So it's a fact. In this material world, without the challenges of life, we cannot turn to Krishna. So a devotee doesn't see challenges as obstacles. A devotee embraces challenges, because the challenges, they make us turn to Krishna. On our own, we don't have sufficient love to actually turn to Krishna even in good times. Very seldom we do that. My spiritual master used to say, when good times are there, we file in a petition for an annual leave from Bhakti, and we take a holiday. But when things are bad, we come back and we stay with Krishna. So that's why Kunti Mata, who was a very famous devotee, Mother Kunti, she prayed very nicely in Bhagavatam. She said that, my Lord, let all the calamities come over and over and over again. Because by all these calamities coming, my heart and my mind becomes fixed at your lotus feet. And just because I am fixed at your lotus feet, the time will come at the point of my death when I pray to remember you, and I will not come back to this world. And in that way, I will end this material cycle of birth and death. So this is a very practical point of chanting that we should keep in mind. I thought what we should do is we should have snippets of this chanting in between what we do as chanting, and not take too long. So let's go back to chanting then. Shall we do that?
Haribo!
So I should, but can you hear me if I keep it away? It's okay. So I can't hear myself. Can I? Part of Krishna's name in the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is actually Lord Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. And Rama actually, the word Rama actually refers to Lord Ram. It also refers to Lord Balaram. And I'm remembering Lord Ram now because he was a great and he's a very powerful incarnation of the Lord. The beauty of Lord Ram is that he's very merciful to devotees. If you remember, he killed Ravana. And Ravana was such a powerful king. He had everything. And yet when he saw Sita, he thought that he should possess Sita also. But he forgot that Sita did not belong to him. Just like sometimes we forget that everything in this world doesn't really belong to us. But if we remember that everything comes from Krishna, then by using something in the service of Krishna, we actually become very peaceful. So Ravana forgot that, and he kidnapped Sita. And after a long battle, Ravana lost his life to Lord Ram. And what Lord Ram did was he actually won over the kingdom of Lanka from Ravana. He should have become king of Lanka, but he did not. Instead, he put Vibhishana, who was the brother of Ravana, as the king of Lanka. And his brother Lakshman asked him, "My dear Lord, you are so kind that even though you have conquered Lanka, you have actually made Vibhishana king of Lanka. What if Ravana had surrendered to you? What would you have done to him?" And Lord Ram said, "If Ravana had surrendered to me, I would have made him the king of Ayodhya." And Ayodhya was actually the kingdom of Lord Ram himself. And this shows us the greatness of Krishna, the greatness of Lord Ram. Krishna and Lord Ram, they don't want anything from us, because everything that we have actually belongs to them. But there's something that we have that they don't have, and that is our freedom. Our freedom to actually take up devotional service and to chant Krishna's names. So let us remember the mercy of Lord Ram. Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram. Shri Ram Jai Ram, Jaya Jaya Ram, Jaya Ram, Jaya Jaya Ram, Shri Ram Jaya Ram, Jaya Jaya Ram, Shri Ram Jaya Ram, Jaya Jaya Ram, Shri Ram Jai Ram, Jaya Jaya Jai Ram, Jaya 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 Ram, Shri Ram Jai Ram, Jaya Jaya Shri Ram Jai Ram, Jaya Jaya Jai Sitaram, Lakshman Hanuman Ji ki Jai.